Hello. 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 So let's start. There are the assignment that I posted. How many of you are able to do 25% of it? One part. Good. 50%, so half. 75, 100%. Okay. So one suggestion is, as compared to the previous two, this is hard, right, and we have to do more things. So a better way whenever you develop a mobile app is first try it on a desktop in your favorite programming language. Let's say Java. And because Java is also another thing good about Java. It's very close to Android programming. It's in Java. So first try it out on your Java programming language on desktop or server, whichever you prefer, and see if you can do it there. If you can't do it there, the probability of you being successful on the mobile is less. And if you can't even do it in the programming language which you have been using for a long time, with all the resources, with all the libraries, with all your previous code, your own code, if you can't do it there, then it's hard. So I recommend that you first start with the Java on your desktop. Parsing, creating sockets, like iterating through all the objects there, doing it in a nested manner, in a recursive manner. All these things, once you understand and get a handle on it on your desktop, you know, okay, this could be the error, because debugging it's time consuming on the mobile. You have to connect it, and in the emulator is hard. Even on the phone, you have to connect it to the USB and do that logcats and everything, and it's hard. So I recommend do it on the desktop first. If you are able to successfully do it on the desktop, then there is pretty good chance that you can replicate the same code with a different syntax on the mobile. Okay. So if you open the sockets, you created a socket, you pass on the HTTP message through it on the desktop, the syntaxes will be the same of HTTP message and socket. It's just that you might call a different language. Same thing for the JSON. You have so many parsers available, libraries on the desktop. Use it and see if you can do it. If you directly come to me and say, okay, I'm not able to do it on the phone, there could be thousands of reasons why you're not able to do it. I can very easily answer if you have, okay, this is how you should do it. What is the assignment says, I can answer that question very quickly. But depending upon which resource you're looking at, which library you're using it, which phone you're using it, and all that, with all that permutation combinations, answering something, it's hard. And I don't know what your other code is, right? There could be something wrong with the way you have initialized things, right? So, of course, you can first talk to the TAs and get something. If you have tried it multiple times, there is just no way out. You can, of course, talk to the TAs. And then, of course, you can also put it on the backpack and talk to me as well. All those options are there. But first, get a handle on what could be the issue. And for that, do it on the desktop. Okay. Now, after all this, I know that you might need more time. Right? So I'm going to give you the whole weekend. Right, so I will extend it to Monday. Okay, so you get an extension for Monday, sure, right? So today, Saturday and Sunday. Is Monday sufficient? Is it okay? Till Monday? So I will change it and let you know. Okay? So let's. Okay, so today's class is about. I'm not going to start a new topic. I want to tell you a few things about projects. I want to float some links, pointers, ideas of my own here now, so that you can think about it also. And if you feel this is something interesting and you can customize it, tailor it, you're free to pick up any of these projects. So I'm not going to give you a project definition, right? And I will give you some hints. And then I will also talk about that individual project, which you have to do it individually. I will describe it as much as detail as I could. But again, I can never describe it fully because it's not a very specific assignment or a question. Okay, it's a project. And after this, so probably I will not take the whole class duration. After this, those who have questions about their own projects can ask me those questions. Okay, let's start. So this is, so I just came across this cartoon. Maybe just take a moment. Right? You can actually learn a lot of different lessons from it. I have to give you one lesson, which I will give you at the end. It's a nice piece of art. Right? So I don't want this kind of a proposal. Right? You can think, okay, what is the bare minimum I should do? Right? Which will actually trigger this, help this, get this point, that's it, all text, right? And then just submit it. Right? If you are going through that mindset of having a formula and saying, okay, this is what I want to do, and it actually covers all these things, right? And then I can write a nice deliverable. I can do a chart and which I can fill, okay, 2 months, not 2 months, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, 6 weeks, all that, right? I don't want this kind of a proposal. Right? You should think of something that you want to build. Think of anything that you want to build, and it is useful now, right now, as it is. Right? If you say, okay, if I get this after that, and then I combine my project with it, then it becomes useful. Then your project is not complete. By definition, itself, right, it's lagging something. You should build on something which is in itself complete. As it is, you can use it from day one. You install it, you use it. And don't think of something which is, okay, in principle, if I get this, if I get that data, and then if I get 100 millions of users, and then I collect data from all of them, and then it becomes useful. Right? It's actually not there. It should be usable from the moment you say install. So I'm sure you are all capable of thinking of, because there's so many things around you which you can actually change, develop, try something new. So I will give you mostly some hints about things you can do. This is one side I looked at. Mostly I will talk about the SDKs. This is vuforia.com. Right? This is supported by Qualcomm. It gives you a very nice SDK to develop games and things that are meant for education. You are doing education, right? You know what is education. You have done through kindergarten till today, right? There are so many things you can actually present very nicely to people. And of course, you all play games, right? The biggest query that comes through the IT department is enable gaming, right? All the time. So you are interested in this topic, right? I would recommend that this is one SDK that you can look at, but there will be far more SDKs, and if you start doing it from scratch, your game will not have that professional look or all the capabilities that you would want to be a successful game. Right? But you can use these libraries and build educational things for kids for them to look at. Right? Interactive things where you ask questions, right? You show something, if the answer is wrong, you take him to a better question or a simpler question, and all sorts of things. Right? So I recommend look at these SDKs and use it. Use as many SDKs as possible. If you have built on top of lots of SDK, I think that's the best thing. But if you're developing everything from scratch and doing everything by yourself, I think that's where you are headed for a danger. Because then you will end up building something which will not look good or which will have issues. That's one. Right? So gaming is fine. You can develop any game that you want. Right? As long as I see the effects of it and everything professional and it looks good, it's not very simple. And don't build anything that is too simple or trivial. Second one is, I looked at this site, it's called cookinghacks.com. Have you heard of Arduino? And you might have heard about Raspberry Pi. Have you heard of Raspberry Pi? So Arduino board is also very similar. It's meant for Android, and that's why the name Arduino. So what it is doing is, it gives you lots of ways to connect physical sensors. As if you don't have enough sensors on the phone, you can actually get very complex sensors. Like there is a sensor that can measure your respiration rate. There is a sensor that actually see whether you are sleeping on your right shoulder or your left shoulder. Right? There are lots of complex sensors which are available. There are sensors which can measure your EEG and your brain waves and see what you're thinking. So there are different sensors available, and if you need this board, I can get you the boards. If you need these sensors, I can get you the sensor. As long as you come up with a promising idea, saying, okay, I will do it for this thing. By the way, these boards are not expensive. You can get it for 1,000 rupees, 1,500. Right? So if you want to do it by your own and keep it, right, that's also is fine. But if you need assistance and you want me to get these boards, I can get these boards, even the sensors. Right? The companies are ready to ship. It's in Bangalore. Right? But you have to come up with a proposal saying, okay, I want to do this thing. Right? The site is Cooking Hacks. It's a very popular site. They have developed all sorts of SDKs and libraries, so you don't have to worry about anything. You just connect this board, the board will talk over Wi-Fi to the phone, and you have an app from Cooking Hacks which will collect data for you, and then you start doing it. That's it. Right? In fact, you can see even kids in the schools are using this one today. And it's very easy. So at any point, stop me and ask questions. Don't wait till the end of the thing, because then the questions will be relevant to what I'm talking. Another one, have you heard of not many. What is it? Can you tell me in one line? Yes.
We can chat.
Yes.
Wi-Fi to the computer.
Yes. Right.
We can connect by networking.
So it means, right? So have you heard of the word P2P? Peer-to-peer. Right? So it was there for a very long time. We talked about peer-to-peer communication in computer networks first. But it was there in the research. Today it's there on the phones. That means if I want to do WhatsApp like chatting, I don't have to have 3G or internet or Wi-Fi or anything. And mostly if I'm interested in talking to people around me, right, I certainly don't need it because all the phones carry Wi-Fi and Bluetooth. Why don't you use that communication method and just directly talk to each other? You can in the class, right, you want to tell your friend something, right, instead of passing that note that you were doing in the school, you can just take out your phone and communicate. It's very easy. So this is the technology. It's there in most of the operating systems. The latest one, iOS, has got it inbuilt. But if you are using Android, then you can get this SDK from Open Garden. And then you can think of what sorts of communications you want to do. So I was just reading in the morning about the Apple Watch. The way they're using it for one cool thing is, if let's say, so I'm sitting and I want to talk to some person, or let's say I want to talk to my wife, and she's sitting in the same hall. What do? I just tap it here, and she gets a tap right on her watch here, without any communication. Right? It will use something which is very similar to this. I tap it here, and she gets to hear that tap on her watch there, and the watch vibrates. Right? So this way of communications, which we are in the proximity, we are close to each other. By the way, this can also you can do. She is in the other corner of the world, she can also get it. You just use the internet for that. But otherwise, within the local proximity, you can do lots of communications, even gaming. And you can play nice games, and you do communication using this chat. So, if you want to think of P2P connectivity and develop any app on top of that, right? For example, you are in the mall, you are sitting in an airplane, right? You can use probably Bluetooth there, because they allow these days Wi-Fi in some things. And if you are sitting in the train and you want to talk to each other, right? You can use this communication. Questions? So I have posted this. I learned that Zomato is very much dependent on lots of libraries coming for Android Arsenal. So I recommend that if you think of anything as a library and you want to see whether it's already available, that's a good resource. Just search it and go to Android Arsenal and find out if anybody else has already done it. And this also applies to the projects, individual project I will mention at the end. Right? So as long as you write in your report what code you have used, from which library, it's okay. Right? You have to disclose saying I use this library, that library, and my code is built on top of that. That's sufficient. Right? It's not a plagiarism. You are free to use it. In fact, I encourage you to use lots of code which is available freely in the internet. Okay? It's a very good website. I will post these links also. You know, talking about a very specific project, I want to float one idea. And this is what I was talking with Angshu. He's the faculty here. So we see very nice ways of recommending movies. So if I tell, okay, these are the kind of things I like, these are the genres I like, this is a Bollywood movie or Hollywood movie, within that action, this, that, right? And then there are engines which will recommend you, depending upon what you like, they will recommend you. What is the movie you should watch? Right? You can go and look at this website, it's called movielens.org. And you can register and see and get recommendations for you. But where this lacks is Bollywood movies. Right? This is very good for Hollywood movies, but if you want to get recommendations for Bollywood movies, there is no such system. You can actually build a system on algorithm which is similar to this and with a phone API. So Zomato will tell you, right, it is actually started asking you what kind of food you like, Italian, Chinese, what kind of food, and then it starts recommending. But it's not yet there. It's not a very good system. They haven't developed it fully. You can develop it for movies, restaurants, and anything otherwise. Right? You just have to tag things, get a list of things. Very important thing is if you know what your friends are watching these days, that's also a good way to recommend you what you should watch. A lot of things that are available, they don't take into account your social networks. Another thing is proximity. If you are staying in Okala, typically your liking will be something similar to of a person which is of the same age group in this area. Right? So you can take into consideration that as well. So with all that, right, you can build a system where you can start recommending what you should watch or where you should go out and eat. Okay. So I have given you some libraries. I have given you some hints about what you should do. Right? And it should be as much as possible complete. And don't say, okay, this, if I get this, then I will do this. My app will work fine. As much as possible, the app should be independent and standing on its own feet. Okay. Now, this is the individual project that I thought of. Now, I will describe it as much as possible. I expect that if you have any question, ask me right now, or otherwise you also have time, by the way. We can have a discussion over that fact. So this is an individual project. It's the objective of this is to develop a location aware. That means the app knows where you are and socially connected. So it's not just for you, right? It has some implication of what your friends are doing. And it's a pedometer. What is a pedometer? Count steps, right? An app that counts steps, or a device rather. It's a meter, it's a pedometer, it's a device that counts how many steps you're walking, right? So it should authenticate you so that it gets your own ID, the user's ID, unique ID, using Facebook credentials. So don't develop your own login passwords, right? Nobody is going to create another username and password. And don't use the emails also for that, right? You can use Facebook credentials to see who their user is. That's first step for authentication. Then it's an app that uses accelerometer sensor to count the number of steps you're walking. And it is running in the background. By definition, it has to then run in the background and continuously sample the accelerometer and see how many steps. So here you can either implement your own algorithm using the high pass and low pass filter I talked about and train it to measure steps. Or there are libraries available on the internet, you can Google and find out. That just gives you pedometer. I'm okay with either. I'm not saying you have to develop your own. If you want, you are interested, you are free to do that. Now, for every 100 steps taken, it records an average location. So that means it is continuously sampling your location and seeing how many steps you are taking. As soon as it sees that you have taken 100 steps, you have walked 100 steps, it sees what was the average location in that 100 steps. It could be the same location, when you're walking just here, or if you're walking far, right, then your average will be the average of start and end. And you're free to compute average anyway. You can have a weighted average, because at some locations you're more, and at some locations you're less, then you can do a weighted average. So once you do that, it records that, and then if you walk for less than 100 steps in consecutive 3 hours. For example, if you are sitting in a movie theater and you don't walk for 3 hours, you're watching a movie, it will notify you in your awake time. Right? If you're sleeping, of course, you will not be walking. But you don't want your phone to notify you while you're sleeping that you're not walking. Right? So you should be able to tell the app that don't disturb me. You can have a don't disturb tag saying from 10 o'clock in the night to let's say 7 o'clock in the morning, don't disturb. But from 7 to morning to 10 in the night again, keep telling me if I don't take 100 steps. And this is all configurable. I just took 100 as a number and 3 hours as a number. Right? You are free to have it changed as per user's preference. Now, this is the social part. It will publish your number of steps in a day. At the end of the day, at the stroke of midnight, right, it will publish it. Something which I am saying Duet.io. Have you heard of this? It's a counterpart of Twitter. Twitter is meant for human communication. I have a Twitter handle, you have a Twitter handle, and then I keep, and somebody is typing there manually. Right? Duet is something which is for the Internet of Things. That's why it's .io. It's meant for devices to start tweeting. It's not human tweeting. And it's automated way of these sensors and devices. So my phone will start tweeting on its own. Right? And it can tweet anything. Just like my TV can tweet. Right? It has got this handle. Anybody can tweet. Or you can use Facebook. I'm not going to, you have an option. Either use Duet.io or Facebook. Facebook means what you post it on your wall. On your wall saying, okay, I took these many steps today. I walked 1,000 steps, 2,000 steps, 10,000, whatever it is. Right? It will post it there. So this will create a social network. Okay. So I will explain that now. So you, at the start of the app, you have an authentication screen, one-time screen, where you give your Facebook handle, and then it authenticates, and it never asks you for your authentication again unless you sign up or you want to change the user. It's a one-time authentication. After that, so after login or start of the app, you have 3 tabs. You must have seen now. Every app typically these days has an interface where there is a main screen. One activity, you swipe it, you see another activity, which is another tab, right? And then there is a third tab, right? You don't go page-wise, you go through the tab-wise. So first, tab will show you a map with all the recorded locations like this so far in the day, right? So if I look at it at 6 o'clock, it should tell me on the map with dots, right, where with average locations, right? I walk 100 steps here, then 100 steps there, then 100 steps there, and so on in the map. Right? So at any point in the day, I can take a view and see where did I walk throughout in the city or wherever I am. Okay, and whatever is the total number of steps I have taken in that day. If it's 10,000, right, it should say at the bottom 10,000 steps taken so far. Second tab, it gives you a timeline of number of steps in the past. So if I want to see what did I do yesterday, or day before yesterday, or in the last week, or in the entire month, or in a year, right, it should aggregate all that and tell me how was I walking in the past. Right? And there is no map here. The map is only for the current time. But if you want to put map here also, you can do that. And finally, it should give you a comparison with what your friends are doing. So if I have 5 friends and I give their Duet handles to you, then you should be able to see what my 5 friends did today or yesterday, something. Right? Yesterday, and say, okay, how did I rank among my friends? I was the one walking most, or I was the one walking least. Right? And you can use Duet.io or Facebook, whichever you think is your company. So this is the app that I got, right? There are some apps like this available, but not in this fashion. Right? And this is something that I can use today. If you develop it, I will start using it, right? And I'm sure other people will start also using it. It's a useful app. So think of something which is similar. To those who don't want to do a proposal, you can develop this. Any questions on this? What is the preference? What should I do? Can I do this?
So the last part, compare your steps with your friends via Reels or Facebook handles. So how? So it should give me an option to
register your friends.
Register your friends.
So if you're using Facebook, you get the social network of your friend automatically.
Okay. So the UI should look like other 5 friends.
Yeah. So ideally, so I'm again giving you full freedom to design the UI because that's also something where you can think. But maybe I'm developing this. I will just show 5 photos or 5 names. Right, and the number of steps. Like 5 lines. And then this is me, right? I will highlight this. Right, this is where I stand. So I know where I stand.
So it should give me an option to register 5 friends.
Yes. Right. So that's what I didn't describe it here. You need to have, let's say you have something which is like say add. Friend. And then you can put the Duet handle of your friend there manually, and then it will add 1 friend. Right? And you can have 5 friends, 10 friends, 100 friends, which similar to what? Yeah. Yes, yes, yes. Yes, so there are, like I said, there are some apps which do something similar. There is another thing that these apps do is what we say trending. Right? This is something which will require you support as a server. You can't do it on the phone. But if there are millions of users using this kind of app, then right, what is the trending all across the globe? What people are doing? Like in the Twitter, you can do the same thing here. What is trending right now? Okay, and I just looked at the parameter. I'm not asking you to do cycling and running and or sitting and other activities. This is only parameter. And I think this one person can do. Starting from, let's say, next week, right? If you started, I'm sure you should be able to finish this thing. Questions? Other questions on this? So I recommend you to look at Grid.io. If you are interested in Facebook APIs more, you use Facebook. You can of course use Twitter also. These are all very similar, right? But you have to do more work and find out that information. Grid.io is pretty easy to use, given that it's a mobile and it is doing automatically. Right? Grid.io is really easy to use. You can even do it right now on your phone. If you go to this website and you can start publishing things within 1 minute. So this is what I have. Right? This is, as I said, this is just a start. Right? On this whole objective, you can do lots of bells and whistles and make it complicated, attractive, and so on. Okay? Don't think this is the only thing you have to develop. It's giving you an idea, but around this, you can actually build quite a lot of things. So questions or otherwise, for next 1 hour, I will be here. Or depending upon how many students want to ask me, I can go into the office. I want you to ask me questions about the project idea you have thought about, right? Whether this is sufficient enough or not, or this is possible or not. Okay, or depending on these two projects, which is the better one. And if you have any one of these, so I will now post you a deadline to select either option 1 or option 2. And I will also set a deadline to fill in that spreadsheet and close it. Okay, and then there will be a deadline to submit a proposal. Right, where you think about this and how you will go about handling this. Right, so all these deadlines will follow very soon. Any question, if it is common across the project, which everybody will benefit, I would recommend that you ask it in the class. If you have very specific questions about your project, then you can talk to me individually. But if something that cuts across for everyone, then ask me in the class right now. No questions? Okay, so I have set aside this time because I was in my office hours, sometimes you are busy in classes. Right, so that's why I set aside this, because I'm not going to teach today anything. I will just answer the questions. Okay, but this probably will be the last time I will do it. I don't have luxury to do it all the classes. So ask me questions right now.